Alrighty, so I just got done seeing X-Men Apocalypse, and now it's time to talk about it. This movie was directed by Bryan Singer, who also directed X-Men, X2, and X-Men Days of Future Past, so he has a track record of handling the X-Men franchise. Once again, overall, I want to say that he delivered, and the film is handled pretty well. There are some flaws of the movie, so I want to talk about those first, because there's honestly not as many flaws as there are good. So let's talk about the title character, Apocalypse. I feel like as an overall character, he's fine, and Oscar Isaac does very well in portraying the character, but I do feel like he wasn't developed enough that once you kind of get into his character and you're like, he does this and that, it's not as understanding, and you might not feel for it as well, because you don't really feel for him on an emotional level. You kind of just understand why he's doing what he wants to do, and that's fine because you understand it, but you don't feel for it as well. So you don't necessarily care about the character as much. The other bad thing about him is his voice. His voice as a whole was fine by me. Like, if you see in the trailer, he kind of has that ominous voice, and I was kind of skeptical going in. But throughout the movie, he doesn't really speak like that as much. There are a decent amount of scenes where he does, but I think that's more of an emphasis on his leadership, like a speech type of voice. But there were some times where it fluctuates, where sometimes he would talk normal and he would talk like this, and then he would talk like this, and it kind of just jumps real quick, and it kind of doesn't make sense why his tone would change. So that kind of just was a little annoying for me, and it kind of threw me off a little bit. Apocalypse, he has the 4 horsemen, and I feel like one of his 4, you totally get it. You're all 4, you're like, bam, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other one, you're half and half. You're like, all right, I get it why this mutant is on Apocalypse's team, but it doesn't, other than that, it's a black and white situation. It's like, all right, I get it. There's not really any other reasons. I just get it. And then there's 2 of them that don't really make sense to me. One of them, this mutant is really awesome. Its powers are really cool, and you kind of wish you knew more about it, but you don't really have any backstory on what this mutant is, what it can do, why it can do it, so that kind of throws me off. And this mutant's bad, so you get why Apocalypse picked this mutant, but you kind of wish you knew more about the mutant to kind of get why it all just went together. And then the 4th one, I just don't get it at all. You see this mutant fighting in like a cage match style when you're introduced to the character, but you don't really understand its powers as much. You don't understand if it's a good mutant, a bad mutant, how it feels emotionally. So it's kind of just weird in general why this mutant is wanted by Apocalypse for its powers or for its morality, for its anything. So it just didn't really work for me as a whole. But for overall, as a team, I felt like it was a cool concept, but I just feel like it wasn't explained well enough. That's the bad. Now let's talk about the good. James McAvoy as Professor X and Michael Fassbender as Magneto, superb. I don't even need to talk about it anymore. If you saw X-Men Days of Future Past and X-Men First Class, you already know that that's going to be like that. Nothing's changed. If anything, it might even be even better. Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique or Raven. A lot of people are criticizing her because she's not in her blue form, in her mutant form for most of the movie. But if you actually go back and think about it, and you actually take your time to think about it, you understand why, because she's still new to her form, and she still mentally doesn't accept herself as a mutant, and that was established in First Class and even in Days of Future Past. So if you go about it there, it makes sense, and I don't understand the criticism now that you throughout the whole movie and throughout the franchise and the trilogy, I guess. So I feel like that's been criticized way too much, and that's not fair. We're introduced to some new characters, and they are pretty cool. The 2 main ones that we're introduced to are Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and Jean Grey. Let's just say they're awesome. I'll leave it at that. When you go to this movie, just expect a lot of coolness from them, and that's really it. Just be ready for some awesomeness from them. Speaking of awesomeness, Quicksilver. So you remember that sequence in Days of Future Past where Quicksilver's... Yeah. Just be ready to see 3 times the experience and the sequence from him in this movie. I'll just leave it at that. Mind blown. As you notice, the good sounds way cooler than the bad did, but unfortunately, I wouldn't say that there was enough cool and good parts of this movie to outweigh the bad to make this movie a great movie. It is a really good movie, and I enjoyed it throughout the entire thing. I wasn't bored. I didn't want to go pee. I didn't leave. I wasn't just on my phone the entire time. I enjoyed this movie entirely, but I didn't love it. It's not one of the best movies ever. There are some flaws, and because there weren't enough great things, it didn't necessarily outweigh the couple amount of bad things there were. So when I give this movie a score, which I am actually going to give it a score because I did take some notes, I am going to give it, I don't know if I want to do it a grade, a percentage, or an out of 10, so I'm just going to do all three. I'm going to give it a B. I'm going to give it an 8.33 out of 10, and I'm going to give it an 83.3%. So take it how you want it. Let me know how you prefer, if you like percentages, grades, or out of 10. And there it is, X-Men Apocalypse. It is a really good movie. I definitely suggest you go see it.